Hey there, I'm Paul Muller, host of the AI Forecast, Data and AI in the Cloud Era, a weekly podcast proudly sponsored by Cloudera that explores the past, present and future of data and AI in the enterprise. This is another installment in a series of recordings we made in New York City at Cloudera's Evolve 24 event, a great event which brought together some of the brightest minds in data and AI to look at the latest innovations, success stories and what's to come. Now for this week's episode. Today we're going to take a deep dive into a couple of different topics. We're going to have a conversation today with Chad Foster, who is an award-winning business leader, an international keynote speaker, and the author of a book that I've recently read. It's blown my mind, a book entitled Blind Ambition, which is an autobiographical account of the experiences that Chad gained after he went blind at the age of 21. And just a quick spoiler alert, we're talking to a man who now goes downhill skiing. Clearly an extraordinary human. Chad, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Paul.
Thank you for being here, and thank you for changing my life with the book. It's no overstatement to say that it was really, it was mind-blowing to read.
That's awesome. I'm glad it clicked with you. It
really, really did. We're going to talk about it in a bit, but before we do, we like to loosen up, limber up our vocal cords a little at the start of this with something we call the Fast Four. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions and give the audience a chance to get to know you through a slightly different lens.
Okay.
Ready to go?
Let's do it.
All right. First question for you is, what would people who know you best say is your superpower?
Tenacity. When I was a kid, my parents used to call me really hard-headed. Really hard-headed, very stubborn.
Yeah.
And so now they call me determined, which is a better marketing version of this very same thing. So I have this relentlessness when I set my sights on something, no blind joke intended. I don't give up. And so that, can be frustrating at times, but I think it's served me well over the long haul.
I love it. Next question. The technology that you think has had the most impact in history?
I think we've yet to see all of its impact unfold, but I would say the computer. The computer, if you think about where we were before computers and the way it's revolutionized everything from the way that we entertain ourselves to the way that we navigate, the way we experience entertainment, the way we conduct business, commerce, the internet, and obviously the future of artificial intelligence. I'm not sure there will be anything that's more revolutionary in the history of mankind than the computer.
You mentioned AI. You've introduced it into evidence, so I'll now prosecute you accordingly.
There we go. Let's do it. Cross-examine.
Yeah. So as we think about AI, there's all sorts of talk about how it, creative ways it can be used. Mm-hmm. In what way could AI be used to automate something that would make your life easier? What's kind of your dream use case?
The dream use case. Wow. Okay. We're going to talk about a dream use case?
Whatever you like. I mean, it's literally, what would make your life easier?
The immediate one that's very practical right now is these Ray-Ban Meta sunglasses, which I have a pair in my backpack.
You do not. I need to see those.
Yeah, I have a pair. We use them you can film, obviously, and there's some capabilities built into them where you can ask Meta, what am I looking at? And it will describe it to you. But what if in real time, the glasses could process the imagery around you? A lot like what I have, my phone actually does some of this with an app called Seeing AI, Seeing Artificial Intelligence, made by Microsoft. And it converts scenes and all, it does optical character recognition, it does scene description, it does facial recognition, currency recognition, all these different things. What if that could exist in the sunglasses that Meta has created with Ray-Ban, to where what you're looking at literally gets transcribed in real time, so that when I'm walking through an airport, I could just look where I need to go and it will tell me a little to your left, your gate B5 is on your right. Like that, I don't think we're that far off from that, frankly.
I'm looking at Major here right now, who's your dog, and he's looking really upset at everything you're saying.
He's looking at, am I going to be unemployed? What does this mean? But it doesn't bring the cuteness or the fuzziness or definitely not the warmth. But
yeah, I bet.
But he does good, but he's not so great at reading the signage. He does, because they're all in English and he's German, obviously.
Yeah, clearly being a German Shepherd. So. Okay, it's going to be this sort of podcast.
Yeah,
folks.
It is.
All right, I'm going to give you the opposite version of this, though. So there's all of this talk of AI, being so clever at doing so many different things. Mm-hmm. What did somebody say the other day? AI is passed the Harvard bar law exams, where would you want to see humans stay in the loop? Where would you be uncomfortable if we took humans out of the loop with AI?
I think having AI become an extension of us is, from my understanding, and maybe I don't fully understand the best ways to use it, but I think, and Elon Musk he's talked about this with Neuralink, and having it become essentially a prosthesis of what we do, that to me, that feels like the right fit. Maybe it's just my insecurity talking about giving up control of the future of humanity, but being able to understand, like, will AI, how well will it contemplate ethical, moral considerations and consciousness? I don't really fully understand that yet. I'm not sure who does. But, as we contemplate the future of humanity and consciousness, I kind of feel like having it be an extension of us is a better place to be than to have it in the driver's seat.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely spot on. Last question on our Fast Four is one about your relationship with data. As I've gone through life as an executive, I've realised, and funnily enough, your book made me reflect on it, was part of the genesis of this question actually, is I started to realise that my relationship with data, how I thought about it, I've got my little tips and tricks and hacks that I use, things that I watch out for when I'm examining data. What's worked for you? I mean, because again, part of the book, the risk of revealing it is, I mean, data is kind of your thing. What tricks or traps have you found that have helped you become a better exec?
Well, data visualization doesn't help me a whole lot. I can tell you that.
You can't say that.
Let's just get that out of the way up front, right?
You can't say that.
Yeah, no, I can. I have to, because it's true. It's true. What helped me was getting my hands dirty. Really getting my hands dirty. And so you've read the book, you understand. They don't know, but my background is all about Excel and processing data. And obviously we're talking about data here in the context. Some of it, a lot of it doesn't fit in an Excel spreadsheet. The data is just too massive. But being able to get my hands on it and create the right views of it, slicing it and dicing it, and being able to really wade into it and see, what is this telling me? How do I roll this up or slice and dice this in a way so that it starts to tell me a story? What's the average? What are the high points, the low points? What sort of trends should I be looking for? And that's how I did so well in my job, was I wrote a lot of code that automated a lot of those roll-ups and analysis, so that instead of spending all my time trying to aggregate the data, I spent time analyzing the data, because I had automated a lot of the roll-up and summary versions.
Yeah, well, that's probably a great segue to talk about your background, and let's get to the work that you've been doing. So for those people listening who haven't heard of you or read your book, maybe just give us a bit of a sense of both your personal story and your business story.
So I went blind at 21 years old from an inherited eye condition called retinitis pigmentosa that nobody in my family knew we had. My parents could see, my brother could see, nobody in our family had a visual problem. I started losing my eyesight roughly in my late teens. By 21, had to get a medical withdrawal from my major. By 23, I got my first seeing eye dog. Yeah, it was a tough period when it first happened, because we ask kids all the time what they want to be when they grow up. Guess what? None of them want to be a blind person. None of them, like zero. I've not heard that answer one time. And so what did I do? What did I do?
You were so wrong.
No, it's true. I'm just being real, man. I'm just being real.
No, I get it. I get it.
Look, it was a hard time. It was really hard at that time. And I had a life-changing moment when I went to get my first guide dog that completely revamped my outlook on life. It changed everything. I walked away from that experience. It was really my tipping point. Understanding the keys to happiness and the keys to gratitude and the keys to success. And it came from that experience that I had there. And that sort of changed the trajectory of my life. I came back, had a newfound appreciation for what I'd been given instead of what I'd lacked. I ended up making straight A's in college. I had to relearn how to learn. And it turns out I was a better blind student than sighted student. And it wasn't because I was a genius. It was because no longer could I rely on my great visual memory to quickly scan and memorize information. I had
You
to
described yourself as a visual learner, didn't you?
I was a very visual learner, which, by the way, is not that helpful when you're blind. It's not all that useful. So I had to relearn how to learn.
Yeah.
And become an auditory learner. And so instead of just memorizing information that I could recall in my mind's eye, I had to digest and metabolize information. I had to learn it.
Yeah.
So going blind actually forced me, and I accidentally became comprehensive. And I made straight A's, made the dean's list, all those things, got a good job at a tech company, went to work for Anderson Consulting. Now we call it Accenture. And started working on my career in the tech field. I wrote code to build enterprise applications, taught myself how to write code to engineer my own software because it didn't work with all the enterprise applications out of the box. So I've done everything from writing code to market intel analysis to pricing analysis, financial analysis, taking on jobs, pricing multi-billion-dollar commercial outsourcing deals where I was managing the cost models for $1 and $2 billion commercial outsourcing transactions. Ended up moving from there into the federal IT space where I was working on similarly large government programs where we were selling into the U.S. federal government, three-letter agencies, civilian, DoD, intel, those things. So doing the strategy, doing the pre-sale strategy, the point-of-sale strategy, the execution strategy. And ended up continuing along that path, ran our pricing strategy and solutions group. When I was at SRA, brought in over $45 billion in contracts for the company, and they asked me what they could do for me. For some crazy reason, I asked them to write a six-figure check and send me to Harvard, and for some crazier reason, they agreed. They sent me there, and that sort of changed the trajectory of my life going there because it was there where I realized how much good I could do if I were to try and use my story to help other people. And so I had a moment there that really ignited something inside me to try and do more than just what I'd been focused on. How could I move beyond myself and help other people with the lessons I've learned along my journey? And I've been I worked at Red Hat for a while as well. Led the global deal desk team. Served as the vice president in charge of the corporate finance team when we closed the IBM deal, when IBM bought us for $34 billion.
Just extraordinary.
And for personal stuff, I like to, like you said, downhill ski. I'm a huge Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu fan. I love to train and fight Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It's kind of an addiction of mine now. It's a hobby. I started doing that just to spend some time with the kids.
And just to be clear, you compete in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu against sighted people.
Correct. Yeah, that's correct.
That's extraordinary. What's your how do you fare?
For somebody who has the level of years that I have, I fare very
how long
well.
have you been doing it for?
It will be 3 years in November, and I've got my purple belt. I got my purple belt after 2 years and 3 or 4 months, which is very quick. But I don't know that it's because I'm super talented. It's because I'm super committed.
Yeah.
I literally go 7 days a week if I'm in town. And they're not even open on Sundays, but I'll have one of the professors come to my house, and I'll train on Sundays. I love it. It's a really, really enriching art for me, and so I'm committed. I really enjoy it. I love the discomfort, which sounds funny.
We talked about this earlier, didn't we?
We did. There's something about doing something that feels uncomfortable, and you're growing from it. You know when you have to get comfortable with the fear, the anxiety, the discomfort, and just lay down in the terror. You know you're growing.
But you weren't always like this. I mean, when obviously, and you can I imagine in no way compare competing in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu with what you went through at 21.
Mm-mm.
But you were not always as mentally strong as you are now.
No, I was not. But after going through what I've gone through, it's prepared me. And as I think about what has put me in the position that I'm in, I think that I'm doing as well as I am because my entire life has been an experiment of living outside of my comfort zone. Everything has been uncomfortable. Learning the limitations of what I could see at a young age, bumping into things, going to the hospital so much that they would question both me and my parents in separate rooms if they were beating me. I was there so much that we almost had our own parking spot at the hospital.
Wow.
Not because they were beating me, but because I was learning the limitations of what I could see.
Yeah.
And then that was physically uncomfortable. And then there's the social discomfort of not being able to drive a car at night. or the emotional discomfort of having to give up a world with eyesight, having to reconsider what I wanted to be when I grew up. 21 years old, having to flush 3 years of university work down the drain, and realizing that the pre-medical field is not in the cards for me, something else. And then the discomfort of getting a guide dog, as helpful and as life-changing as that was, then I'm walking into university classrooms with a guide dog. I'm going into job interviews with a dog and boardrooms and traveling all over the world without being able to see and having a dog lead me around and sometimes not being able to speak the language or obviously read the signage. And that was uncomfortable. But now what I've found is all that discomfort has caused my comfort zone to expand. And so now I do things like ski down double black diamonds for fun, not being able to see, because I crave the discomfort, not because I'm crazy, which my wife might argue some of that.
Oh, no, I think I'd join her.
Yeah, but it's not because I don't want to be careless about it. I want to take appropriate measures.
Yep.
I have a family I want to go home to, but I know that when I'm outside my comfort zone, I'm growing. A lot of people think that, oh, well, there's this, I don't know, our culture has gravitated, I think, to creature comforts. And those comforts kill our ability to grow. They kill our ability to innovate. And so I would argue that life itself begins outside of our comfort zones. You're not growing if you're not uncomfortable. And so that is why I train jiu-jitsu as much as I do. That's why I love skiing as much as I do, because those things are now accessible for me and they make me feel the discomfort. And in that discomfort, I know that growth is happening.
It goes back to that superpower of tenacity in many respects. It seems to be, an incredible trait. I want to touch a little on, the one thing I'm a bit fuzzy on is, you at 21, is it legally blind is effectively how I describe it at that point in time? Like you were...
I guess. It's hard to give you a great answer on that. I know where you're going.
Well, I suppose the year was my question. So I'm trying to get a sense of what technology was around because, we were looking at your Apple Watch before and there's all these great affordances that are in there now to support yourself.
Yep. It's a great time to go blind.
You can't say that.
Of course I can.
What are you...
We're taking applications. It has legs. Get in while the getting's good.
You were absolutely shocking. Honestly, we're going to get cancelled because of you.
It's a true story. It is true. It's all about perspective.
My stomach's hurting. Give us a sense of what technology was like at that point in time for yourself, because I think I want to use a very specific example. You talked about in the book your mother had to transcribe or read all of your coursework, which I'm presuming would probably be digitally available now, but
would be.
But back then
it was not. Yeah, she read it. She read it to these things called cassette tapes. You may have seen one of these. They're probably in the Smithsonian at this point, right? It's what people used to use before CDs.
So what year was this then? Do you remember?
This was she started doing that around 98, I would say.
Really?
Yeah,
even 90. Then it was that bad?
Oh, yeah. Wow. Well, and I graduated in... When did I graduate? 2000. And so maybe it was 97.
Yeah.
96, 97.
But still, I mean, I would have thought by that stage there'd be so much more digital courseware.
Well, there were audio books available by then on CD, but not curriculum.
Yeah.
You could get a book on CD. Could you get, I don't know, Finance 201, Statistics 301? No, you couldn't. And so she literally read every single college business book to audio cassette for me. And let me tell you, when somebody does something like when somebody does something like that, how do you let them down?
Yeah, good point.
How do you disappoint them? And so it inspired me to have more tenacity because she had done that. And she read literally 12, 14, 16 hours a day.
Shout out to all the mums out there.
Absolutely.
Right.
She read that book, all those books, probably a lot more carefully than my classmates did, which is why they gave her an honorary accomplished alumni award when they gave me that. Seriously.
Yeah.
They did.
Yeah.
This is back in 2014. They gave me the accomplished alumni award, and I was like, you guys need to do something for my mom because it's extraordinary. Who does that? Literally, who reads all the college business books
That's great.
for their child.
So, and similarly, I guess from a tech standpoint, so you graduate, again, against the odds, in my opinion. You move into Accenture, which is, no disrespect to any of the folks at Accenture, but a reputation for being an extremely hard-nosed, tough environment. Sink or swim is kind of the external impression that you get about a place like that. I mean, the best of the best go there, right?
Yeah.
So you head there. How much was the technology a help or a hindrance? Was there a lot of infrastructure for you there at the time?
No, there was. I mean, they were good, but it wasn't them. I think it was, honestly, in hindsight, I should have known how to engineer my own software before I ever stepped through the door.
And I guess that's my point I'm getting at. So the affordances we see these days were not as prevalent as they are back then?
No, I think today there's more accessibility because a lot of accessibility can be built in because a lot of things nowadays that we have these web accessibility guidelines and we have a lot of thin client, i.e. web-based applications where it's, you can build the accessibility in without a lot of customization needed on the back end.
Yep.
And those sorts of guidelines didn't exist back then. And there was no thing, I don't think Section 508 was around yet. I got to check the date. And certainly, you're looking at predominantly Win32 applications in the corporate environment, Windows 32-bit applications, client server architectures, not a lot of web-based applications. There were some, and they were usually, pretty darn accessible. But a lot of the things that were being used in a Win32 setup had problems. And so that's why I spent a lot of my time trying to figure out how to connect the dots between those applications. How do I write code to engineer the software that I need to use with all the other pieces of software that are out there? And that took some time to get up to speed. Because I was a pre-med major. I switched my major to business administration. I wasn't a tech guy. I wasn't computer science.
Yeah, okay.
I was trying to figure this out with my eyes closed. How do you write code to engineer software when you can't see your computer screen?
Again, mind completely blown. When we think about data, so you spend a lot of time analysing and working with data. I suppose my curiosity is, you made the joke about visualization before, is how did those sorts of tools like Excel and others, how do you think, in your opinion, that we could use some of these tools like AI to better process and present that information to people so that people like yourself are able to be more productive?
Oh, there's huge opportunity there to identify, like analyzing the millions of data points that lie in the data set instead of, building the tables or the analysis to identify the trend lines, to do that visually. The AI has to be able to do all of that analysis for us. And instead of presenting it in a visual manner, present it in text, because obviously text is more helpful than a picture when you can't see. And so that was sort of that was the things that I'd done with Excel, is just, okay, what's the data saying? Well, it would tell me that in numbers or in words, right? And it would do that, obviously, by doing the analysis and all that. But AI can absolutely serve that purpose. And I think with the data sets that we're getting to now, we're not talking about, 600 spreadsheets. We're talking about, data sets that are just astronomical. You can never fit them in a spreadsheet. They're so big. And so we need AI to do that for us now.
Just going back to the comment about the 600 spreadsheets, when I was reading the book, one of the things that jumped out at me was that there was this massive overlap between different data sets you had to coordinate. What did that teach you about working with multiple data sets and trying to wrangle all of that?
I think the hardest part for me was getting everything scrubbed and into the tool. Like because I would write a lot of automation that I would bolt on top of what I needed to do, because I would have tons of spreadsheets that did all kinds of formulas and calculations and analysis. But it was only as good as what I put into that stack of spreadsheets. And so I would spend, probably 40% of my time collecting, preparing, scrubbing, and getting the data ready to be dumped into the bottom of the stack.
Yeah.
And then once that happened, then I could open up the stack and follow the data to see what it's telling me, identify anomalies, and maybe correct a few things here or there. But when I spent the 40% of my time up front normalizing the data, scrubbing the data, making sure there were things like no trailing spaces or commas, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Little things
like data hygiene.
Yeah, data hygiene, exactly. When I spent the time to do that, all of the automation that I wrote on top of it would work. But it was only as good as the underlying data set. So I learned to invest my time in preparing the data for use, because I knew if I had to reinvent all the automation and analysis and formula building and all that on every single deal that I worked on, my productivity would it would sink.
Yeah, and that's one of the sort of themes that keeps coming up again as we talk about now the next level of automation with AI is getting the data scrubbed and clean and, garbage in, garbage out. I guess it's an old cliche, but that seems to be more true now than ever.
Yeah.
If you're going to automate it, you've got to get the data right to begin with.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay. I want to talk about, I suppose, the future. What do you see as areas of focus that our listeners who might be working on projects at the moment, things that they could be doing right now, decisions and choices they could be making to build better apps and services for people who may not have the same, whether it's hearing or eyesight or physical mobility? Do you give much thought to what we need to be doing to produce better software or better experiences, better devices?
I don't spend a lot of time thinking about it, but certainly you look around and there's so much opportunity to solve so many problems given the tools that we now have at our disposal, whether it's things like computer vision or artificial intelligence or prosthetics or what's going on with Neuralink. Like, it almost seems like there's infinite possibilities out there. And so I think the only limit is our willingness to consider what can be done and how we can apply the technology to solve these problems. And so specifically, from my own point of view, I would love to have better ways of getting around. That seems to be one of the biggest challenges that I face. I travel a lot. And so being able to get around more seamlessly, to have some tool, some device, something that was better at navigating, both indoors. No offense, Major. I realized I just said that, and he's like probably covering his eyes with his paws. But
he's actually sleeping and twitching right now. I think he's officially he's in REM sleep.
But you would think that we would have a bit more progress in that front. Look at the maps that we have outside. Okay, that's pretty good. Indoor maps, you go to a big casino, a big convention center, a big mall. It's not great, right? Airports and things. There's a lot of opportunity there, and just laying out in a mapping system and connecting that to a way that people would consume that. Like I said, with the Ray-Ban Meta glasses, there's just so many different avenues that we could go right now. It seems like we're right on the cusp of a lot of innovation.
It does, and the great news, I think, to some of the discussion we've been having is so many tech vendors are now taking that extra step. And then you add it to things like, I hadn't even thought about the idea of indoor navigation, and just how much better we could make that experience for everybody. Because everyone gets lost in malls. I don't care who you are, right?
Exactly.
And so, what an incredible thought. So, look, absolutely fascinating conversation. If people want to learn more about what you're doing or get involved, where can they go?
They can go to my website, which is chadefoster.com.
All right, perfect. Chad, I want to thank you so much for joining us on today's podcast. It has been inspirational and a lot of fun as well.
I appreciate you having me.
Thanks to Cloudera for hosting another episode of the AI Forecast, and special thanks to you, our listeners, for tuning in. Please feel free to reach out to Cloudera on social media, at Cloudera on LinkedIn, with any questions for our guests or feedback for future episodes. We'll see you next week.